Live from Citizen TV, this is Tonight with Sam Gituku.
Now, exactly 1 month ago today, protesters stormed parliament buildings, lives were lost, property destroyed, and a country changed. A day later, President William Ruto dropped the divisive Finance Bill 2024, and weeks later fired his cabinet. Tonight on Data Point, we walk through the proposed budget cuts amounting to 198 billion shillings. We look at the impact of that proposal by the government, which will have on the total budget, which is set to reduce to 3.87 trillion shillings. That is later on Data Point, but also tonight, the news gang will be here to talk through the latest developments in cabinet reconstitution and a look at the last 1 month in Kenya. But first, here are the headlines tonight. March on Parliament commemoration. Police dispersed protesters in Nairobi. Several march organizers arrested. Police killings in numbers. State human rights body now puts death toll at 60 and 66 persons missing.
Anasema hivi. Hata hiyo amesema to compensate. He won't. He won't. Hawezi.
Please do not mock us. Mother of peaceful protester killed outside Parliament in emotional plea to the president. Angry and divided, opposition Azimio coalition begins to crumble as Martha Karua initiates divorce proceedings. Good evening. Our sign language interpreter is Yola Nzale. We begin at Parliament buildings, the intended destination of a planned march by protesters commemorating a month of the deadly shootings at the start of the anti-finance bill demonstrations. Police blocked the march today and fired tear gas canisters to disperse protesters who are also heading to the office of the president at the Harambee House to deliver a petition. And as Brenda Wanga reports, several protesters, including Boniface Mwangi, were arrested during the commemorative march.
The capital Central Business District under a cloud of stingy tear gas. Police, in what has become routine nearly every Tuesday and Thursday, dispense the crowd control tool to disperse pockets of protesters who answered the call to march to the office of the president to demand for justice for the families of those killed during the protests and also to honor their memory. The protesters had gathered in the streets of Nairobi carrying flags, crosses, flowers and caskets bearing the names of those felled by police bullets or abducted and tortured to death. But the police moved in to stop the march, a move that angered protesters who had maintained that their march was peaceful.
It's nothing but corruption. Whatever you have seen, the kind of violence they have meted onto us. We were only armed with flowers. We were only armed with our voices. And you have seen the kind of violence they've given into us.
Those that died that day and those that have been killed and abducted for peacefully and unarmed picketing to present their grievances to this government and to make their voice known to this government.
It's important that we do this because when you wamekufa, your time it was them, and it can always be us, clearly, because it's not like they're targeting a specific group of people. As long as you're speaking against what they're doing, which is of course wrong in everyone's eyes, you could be a victim at any point.
On this day, last month, protesters staged an unprecedented march on Parliament, breaching its perimeter fence and storming the houses of Senate and National Assembly. Heavy use of live rounds of ammunition leading to the death of scores of protesters. Some of those that died were peaceful and unarmed.
These flowers, we bought them to commemorate the lost lives experienced and all of that. And it's such a sad encounter that we cannot do that peacefully without having to run for our lives, being tear gassed. It's not fair. And whatever the government is doing right now is really, really, really wrong. And they're killing their own people. Mtachaguliwa na nani? Ni sisi tu.
A number of the leaders of the day's protest, including Boniface Mwangi and Shadrack Khalif, were arrested and taken to the Central Police Station. They may not have achieved their aim today of occupying the CBD in remembrance of their fellow protesters who have since died in the last 6 weeks or so of agitation for better governance. But the young people are now saying that they will be marking this day, the 26th of June, every year for that very same purpose. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And connected to that, human rights activists are demanding the release of protesters arrested today during the commemoration of the June 25th Occupy Parliament protests. The human rights crusaders and families of those missing are demanding that the government respects their right to picketing and stop attacking protesters. They also want President William Ruto to honor his word and release all protesters currently in police custody. We'll be bringing you the voice of that later on. But first, the family of David Chege, a young man tragically shot during anti-government protests on the 25th of June this year, remains in a state of anguish. Despite official confirmation that Chege fell victim to police guns, the government's response has been a silence and inaction. This glaring lack of accountability raises serious concerns about the handling of such incidents. Ode Francis visited the family of David Chege, the first protester to be shot dead on the 25th of June 2024 at Parliament Buildings.
June 25th, 2024, protests erupted across the country with 36 counties participating. The demonstrations were fueled by grievances related to social justice, governance and human rights. 60 protesters have lost their lives since the protest began. According to statistics from the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, these casualties demand urgent investigations and accountability. Citizen TV visited David Chege's home a month after his death. Here, we found a grieving mother and a grandmother who shared their pain over losing their beloved son. The emotional toll on Chege's family is palpable.
No, late April ndio tuliongea na yeye akaniambia alikuwa amepeleka nyanya yake hospitali.
Despite conclusive evidence that Chege was shot by a police officer, the government has failed to bring any officer to court.
Nakumbuka bwana yake, nakumbuka sasa huyu kijana yangu. Na hiyo ingine ni ya my grandmother. Metengenezwa hivyo alafu patawekwa kama grilli.
The silence surrounding Chege's case is deafening, leaving his family without answers or closure.
Sasa ni nini anataka kuonyesha watu? Anasema hivi, anasema hivi. Hata hiyo amesema to compensate. He won't. He won't. Hawezi.
Disturbingly, officers involved in these operations often remain anonymous. They operate in plain clothes, their faces concealed, and drive unmasked vehicles without registration numbers. This lack of transparency raises questions about accountability and their intentions.
Hatujajua ni nani anawaua. Lakini unaona tu hata kwa TV unaona hao watu wako tu na hizo mabunduki. They are in civilian. Sasa hatuwezi tukajua ni nani andimuua. Mimi sijaona watu wa serikali apart from hao walikuja hapa. Huyo anaitwa Boniface Mwangi na huyo mwingine ni Mwisel na Hanifa. Serikali hakuna pahali na kujiaga. Hata hawajawahi ambia mtu pole.
Witnesses have reported officers firing indiscriminately at protesters, the use of excessive force, and the absence of proper identification further exacerbates the crisis.
Alikuwa nampeleka hospitali tangu akupe. Nikaona sasa mimi nitakufa. Kijana ni banampenda.
He is the president. Yeye ndio anatakiwe awe mwongozo mzuri. na ni mtu yuko na familia na yuko na watoto. Hata yeye anaweza akasikia ile uchungu sisi tunasikia.
1 month later, memories of Occupy Parliament Gen Z protest still lingers, with family only hope that one day justice will be served. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Gatundu.
And we want to take you back to that story that human rights activists are demanding the release of protesters arrested today during the commemoration of the June 25th Occupy Parliament protests. The human rights crusaders and families of those missing are demanding that the government respects the right to picketing and stops attacking protesters. They also want President William Ruto to honor his word and release all protesters currently in police custody.
Yesterday, the president was very clear. Those who have been arrested will be released. Why are we carrying out new arrests today? No one was injured on the side of the police. No looting occurred today. These were individuals who were exercising their constitutional right, and they were stopped. I think we sit here because it is very sad that Kenya seems to be regressing, and more daily we see that our constitution is being treated as a mere suggestion.
In our resolve, we commit to continue with our right to protest and hereby demand action by the office of the president to avert further killings.
Na right now venye ninaongea, my sister ako ndani, hata ukiangalia kitu ina thread, ameshikwa akiwa kwa gari holding the portrait of Evans Kirato, na kuna askari alikuwa amejaribu kumnyonga, na pia bwanake wameshikwa na bwanake, na pia yeye anaumia akiwa huko cell, bado hajapelekwa hospitali, hawajashughulikiwa. So what we are demanding ni waachiliwe immediately with no condition.
Now, without the march on Parliament, the finance bill would have become law. These are the words of a protester who spoke to us about the events of June 25th, 2024, a day the protesters say should be celebrated and not be condemned due to what it achieved for the country. The protester admits being on the front line and making it all the way to the floor of the National Assembly. The protester, whose identity we shall not reveal, spoke to Citizen TV's Emmanuel Tor.
It was an unprecedented moment in Kenya's history. In no time, thousands of protesters appeared to overpower the police, breaking one of Kenya's most protected installations.
Tumevunja fence, tukaingia basi. Tukaingia, tumekanyaga nyasi sasa. Tumeingia, tumeona mikono, tumesema we are peaceful, we are peaceful. Kwa kweli hatukuwa na haja na kuumiza mtu hiyo siku. Tukaingia tu tunasema we are peaceful, we are peaceful. Tukalala sasa hapa. Wenye tulikuwa mbele, unajua mimi nilikuwa mbele kabisa hapa. Uangalie nyuma sasa. Hiyo sasa uangalie nyuma, lakini nikiangalia wale watu walikuwa nyuma yangu baadaye. Karibia mia. Ndio tuliingia hiyo sasa mara ya kwanza sasa.
A protester who was on the front line spoke to us on condition of anonymity.
Tukainua tu kichwa kidogo. Mnasonga mbele, bado mnasema we are peaceful, we are peaceful. Risasi tunazikalia, tukalala chini. Tukalala chini, tukaanza sasa hatukuinuka sasa hivi. Tukalala chini, tukaendelea kusonga mbele, tukisema we are peaceful. Walipoona tusimami, risasi sasa zikalia ile hazisimami.
When the fence came down, protesters found themselves on the manicured lawns of Parliament.
Hapo tulipoingia tulikuwa mamia za watu sasa. Polisi wakajaribu kufiatua wapi watu wasonge nyuma. Sasa walipoenda ndo sisi tukaingia sasa kwenye jumba lenyewe la bunge. Tukavunja dirisha, tukaingia, tukajipata ndani ya cafeteria. Wakakula mchele, nyama, kulikuwa na masoda kama maji. Haikupita dakika 10. Ikienda sana 15 ndani ya bunge yenyewe. Hapo nje kutoka fence hadi kuingia bunge, hapo ndo kazi ilikuwa.
And when they turned their backs to run for their safety, the police in official and plain clothes opened fire indiscriminately.
Tukitoroka nikaona mmoja wetu ameanguka. Kamuuliza, umepigwa? Akaniangalia, pointi ya mguu yake, akaniambia alipoint tu mguu yake, nikaita watu. Nikamwambia kujeni mnisaidie tubebe huyu. Tukamshika, tukambeba, tukamweka hapo kando, tukaanza kuuliza, tunaulizana tumsaidiaje. Tukajaribu, mimi nikasimama sasa nikaenda kutafuta ambulance. Kutoka hapo Bunge nikitembea sasa nikivuka hiyo Parliament Road. Naona mwili ya mtu huko. Alikuwa amepigwa risasi ya kichwa, unaona huko kidogo ndani. Na tulipofika hapo ilikuwa ni kali, ndio ilikuwa imefanyika. Jua kwa hata na damu imeanza kutoka kwa kichwa yake. Ndio ilikuwa imefanyika tu hapo. Sasa mmoja wetu tulikuwa tumesimama hapo, mmoja wetu akaekelea bendera juu ya kichwa yake.
The aftermath, bodies lying in pools of blood, hundreds of those who dodged bullets, writhing in pain and anguish, and property worth millions of shillings destroyed. The killings at the precincts of Parliament did not stop there, as snipers at top strategic buildings around Parliament reportedly opened fire at innocent civilians.
Ningia City Hallway. Tukiongea hapo, tukaona mtu ameanguka tu. Kwenda kuangalia nini, unaona pata akona shimo upande moja kichwa, alafu amefura upande mwingine. Sasa ni risasi imepigwa, lakini risasi yenyewe bado iko ndani ya kichwa yake. Mimi niko hapo najaribu kushangaa mtu amepigwa risasi wapi? Risasi imetoka wapi?
Despite the deaths and injuries from the police bullets, the protester maintains the occupation had to happen to force the president's hand.
Lakini kama tungeenda bunge, wangepitisha bill. Kama tungeingia bunge, watoroke waingie hizo tunnel, waende hivyo. Hiyo bill ingepita.
Emmanuel To, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, 1 month after the deadly Occupy Parliament that left 6 people dead and over 100 others admitted at the Kenyatta National Hospital with gunshot wounds and injuries, the victims continue to suffer in silence amidst the formation of a broad-based government to address issues raised by the Gen Zs. Citizen TV crew met with 2 of the victims who left hospital 2 weeks ago and are now recuperating back at home.
Happiness is written all over their faces when they meet again after 2 weeks. It is a friendship that was developed during trying times. Sadiq Suleiman and Thomas Gashushu were strangers until the events of June 25th, which made their paths cross. An agitation against the Finance Bill 2024 and bad governance was the main reason they left their homes to join their fellow youth to demand better leadership. A decision that has left them with lifetime scars and memories of a day that will remain etched on Kenyans' memories. Gashushu, a content creator, artist and a plant operator, is lucky to be alive. Having been shot near Parliament buildings, he lived to tell his stories, even after having the bullet lodged inside his body for 2 weeks.
Nilipigwa ikaingia hivi, ikakuja hii side nyingine, lakini ikotokea ikapasua mshipa imepitia hapo. Unajua sasa hii mguu ni kama system. Ikapasua mshipa moja. Nimekaa nayo hiyo ridhe, nimekaa nayo for 2 weeks. Wiki ya 3 ndo imetolewa juu hata iko itoke.
He says his sad encounter in the ward was when he lost a friend who was shot twice in the back during protests. The injury has, however, turned his life around as he has stopped working and now depends on friends and well-wishers.
Mimi ni operator, nafanya hizo kazi. Sasa unajua hiyo cooperate hizo machine, unasimamanga hapa kwa control panel for like the whole day, the whole day. Una operate the whole day hadi ile time mfunge kazi ama fuel iishe. So unasimamanga 12 hours kumzima. Sasa hii siwezi simama.
Sadiq, another youth, had participated in the protests and was on his way home when everything went wrong.
Tulifika pale tukakutana na polisi alikuwa hapo. So alikuwa anashauta akisema wasimamishe gari. So kushika hiyo kwa mlango, kumbe afande bana ashafika hapo kwa mlango. Hadi ametokea bunduki ametupoint na tuambia tulale chini. So one of us happened that akaturn. So hiyo moment wakati alikuwa na turn tu hivyo, akapigwa risasi ya mapaja akalala chini.
A confrontation ensued between the officers and the team. It was at this moment that he was hit with a gun, tearing his knee muscles.
Tukaanza kuvutana naye, so akavuta hiyo bunduki hadi ndio niko na alama hapa. So hiyo nozzle ilinirarua, then akanisukuma. So wenye alinisukuma akanigonga na hiyo sijui inaitwaje, hiyo bunduki inakuanga na chuma nyuma. So hiyo bunduki ndiye akanigonga nayo kwa mguu mara mbili. Alinigonga 1, 2.
They hold that they do not regret participating in the protest to push for good governance, as there have been positive developments since the protest began.
Siwezi regret hata kidogo. Ati venye nilifanya nilienda huko hii kama ningeuliwa, ati nilishutiwa, hapana. Mimi nilifanya hiyo kitu na roho moja. Na sasa venye sasa tumekaa hadi msee anaona government ni kama imetusahau bana.
Their plea to President William Ruto is to ensure they get justice and compensation to resume their normal lives and help build the nation.
That story was produced by Gatete Njoroge. Now, the number of lives lost in the last 5 weeks of anti-government protests has risen to 60. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights says 66 persons are missing. In its latest report, the Commission noted the emergence of pro-government groups of motorcyclists who on Tuesday appeared well coordinated and under the wing of the police.
10 lives lost in just as many days. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights now puts the death toll from the anti-government protests in the last 1 month and 1 week at 60.
Stop killing us!
Only 9 days ago, on July the 16th, the Constitutional Commission put the figure at 50. In the intervening period, the number of those reported as abducted or missing has gone up from 59 to 66, while the number of those arrested has gone up from 682 to 1,376. The Commission making several observations as concerns mount over the abduction of protesters by masked men in civilian clothes and unmarked cars. On Thursday, protesters attempted to unmask these men when their peaceful march in memory of those killed by police was violently dispersed by the very same police. The Commission, in its report noting of protests held on Tuesday in Nairobi Outer Ring Road and Kitengela, 7 unmarked Subaru Outback saloon vehicles with officers in civilian were spotted providing cover to the anti-riot police. KNCHR also took note of pro-government boda riders who appeared well-coordinated and facilitated and who, unlike other protesters, appear to enjoy the protection of police. The report noting KNCHR monitors spotted a fleet of motorcycles fueling at Rubis petrol station at the junction of Haile Selassie Avenue and Uhuru Highway under the watch of police. They then converged at Uhuru Park, where they seemed to be receiving instructions from some leaders before proceeding to the city centre. A similar group on bodabodas and who called themselves Vijana wa Serikali were captured on CCTV, forcing their way to human rights activist Boniface Mwangi Sema Ukweli offices on Saturday. Olive Burrows, Citizen TV.
In the meantime, the deadly protest that shook over 36 counties in the country left a trail of destruction and loss of business worth hundreds of millions of shillings. The hardest hit was the Sunbeam Business Complex on Nairobi's Mfangano Street, which was looted and burnt by goons who infiltrated the protests. The memories of that tragic day remain vivid for the affected business operators, many of whom lost colleagues to the violence, with others sustaining injuries. Ben Kirui spent the day with members of the Sunbeam complex who are still struggling to pick up the pieces.
June 25th, 2024 will remain etched in the memories of many, especially the business operators at Sunbeam Business Complex, which was engulfed in flames. After being torched by arsonists, the business operators at the complex lost goods worth hundreds of millions. The most devastating blow, however, was the tragic death of 3 individuals, with several others sustaining injuries. Among the injured was Georgina Mashirima.
Kosi jambo rahisi. Ulikuwa unajitegemea wewe mwenyewe na mguu wako mbili. Sasa hivi kila kitu ndio usonge, uende chooni, lazima usaidiwe, ndio ulale ujigeuze. Na pia kuna vile uwezi lala na pande zote mbili, unalala tu na pande moja.
Mashirima's wound in her right leg is a constant reminder of her narrow escape as the stalls caught fire one after another.
Wakati huo ambao niliruka na nikajipata kwamba nimeumia ndio ilikuwa vibaya, ila pia nilishukuru Mungu kwangu kwa maisha, kisa mimi niliumia wenzangu waliweza kupoteza maisha.
While Mashirima recuperates and hopes to start a new journey, some of her colleagues embodying the spirit of unity is strength have joined hands to rebuild their businesses. They are currently operating from a new place at Sianda Mall along Nairobi's Mfangano Street.
Nakaa kwa nyumba, kwa neema ya Mungu tukafanikiwa tukapata hapa. Hata ni Mungu tu alifanya miujiza tukapata mali tuko, kwa sababu hatukukusudia kufika hapa.
Ile kidogo tuko nayo tuliona ni vizuri tukuja tuwekele. At least hata serikali muweze kutusaidia, kwa sababu enyewe tulipoteza mali nyingi. Kama mimi nilipoteza mali ya milioni kama 2 na kuna wenzetu pia walipoteza wapendwa wao.
Tumejaribu kutafuta vile tunaweza ungana ili tushikane tuweze kuendeleza hii biashara yetu. Imekuwa ni ngumu kidogo kwa sababu most of us hatukutarajia kitu kama hii inaweza fanyika.
Although business is slow, their belief is that they will stand strong again. It's been a month since Sunbeam Complex business went up in flames. Many business operators are still trying to rebuild and recover. But for the families of those who lost their lives, life will never be the same. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
When we are taking a break after that month of rage, when we come back, we'll be telling you about more stories in the news, but also remember the data point is focusing on what has changed on the budget of the year 2024-2025, emerging from that situation that was witnessed a month ago. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still watching Tonight. And President William Ruto has defended his nomination of Professor Kithure Kindiki to retain the Interior Ministry docket. While addressing the Tharaka-Nithi residents during development stops, President Ruto lauded Kindiki's performance at the Interior docket a few days before his vetting in Parliament. He at the same time defended his new cabinet lineup as a decision meant to bring the country together. Stephen Leto has more.
President Ruto made his first public engagement since he unveiled his cabinet nominees that brought on board Raila Odinga's key appointment, who comprise the top leadership of the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. President Ruto, while speaking in Tharaka-Nithi County, defended the broad-based political government he has started to craft.
Jana mimi nimetangaza ya kwamba tunaunda serikali ya kuunganisha Wakenya wote. Na katika serikali hiyo hatutaki kubaguana tena. Tunataka kila mtu tuungane pamoja kwa kutafuta maendeleo ya Kenya.
President Ruto affirmed that the unity government will now embark on a national conversation on debts that was a big conversation during the anti-government protests.
Tuungane pamoja kwa kulipa madeni ya Kenya. Tuungane pamoja kwa kuunganisha stima, kwa kusomesha watoto wetu, kwa kutafuta matibabu. Wakenya wote waungane.
The midterm unity cabinet brought on board MPs John Mbadi, who is the national chairman of the ODM party, Opiyo Wandayi, the minority leader in the National Assembly, while Ali Hassan Joho and Wycliffe Oparanya both hold the deputy party leader position in ODM.
Wangapi mnataka tuungane ama tutengane? Wale wanakubali tuungane sisi wote kama watu wa Kenya, nione kwa mkono. Kithure Kindiki aendelee asiendelee? Wale wanasema Professor Kithure Kindiki.
A few days before their vetting in Parliament, President Ruto praised Professor Kithure Kindiki, his pick for the Interior docket.
Huyu Professor Kithure Kindiki ni mtu shujaa. Amefanya kazi mpaka wale magaidi walikuwa wanatusumbua kule Lamu wametoroka. Huyu mungwana, kulikuwa na watu wanaitwa bandits. Walikuwa wamesumbua watu wa Baringo. Hata shule ingine ilikuwa imefungwa miaka 19. Huyu jamaa amefanya kazi mzuri mpaka hizo mashule zimefunguliwa.
mimi nikiwa waziri wako wa usalama wa taifa, kwa sababu ya ile umoja umeleta, sasa tuna nafasi nzuri ya kupata maendeleo na nchi yetu itaendelea kusonga mbele.
President Ruto and his team today going all out in defending the unity cabinet in a region that heavily voted for them in the 2022 general election.
Ndio rais naye akarudisha mkono kwenu na huyu Profesa Kithure Kindiki. Si hapo mlisikia mzuri? Si anafanya kazi nzuri? Rais amefanya mzuri kumrudisha, hakufanya mzuri. Mmefurahi? Aendelee na kutwanga kazi.
Ya ile serikali umeunda juzi ya National Unity. Wale watu walikuwa wanapiga kelele wakiwa nje kwamba uweki pesa ya kutosha katika finance bill. Mimi naona umeleta wale watu karibu. Kwa hivyo sasa tungependa wahusike kutuonyesha ile mipango walikuwa nasema ifanye wakiwa nje itafanywaje ikiwa ndani.
The president was on a development tour of Tharaka Nithi County and opened projects in Mara, Tharaka and Chuka-Igamba Ng'ombe constituencies. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
Now, differences in Azimio coalition continue to widen, with Martha Karua's NARC Kenya party formally announcing its exit from the opposition outfit. Azimio core principals Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa and Jeremiah Kioni have vowed to reject any dealings with the Kenya Kwanza administration, even as they claim that there is a plot by President William Ruto to weaken the opposition by absorbing some of its members in government. Seth Olale has the latest on growing rift in the opposition caused by inclusion of 4 members of the ODM in the cabinet.
And held fruitful discussions.
The rift in the opposition Azimio coalition continues to widen further following the nomination of ODM members in President William Ruto's cabinet. The Martha Karua-led NARC Kenya party has formally expressed its interest to exit Azimio. In a letter dated July 25, 2024, the party's acting Secretary General Asha Bashir made the announcement to Azimio stating, and I quote, "Kindly take note that our stay in Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is not tenable due to the prevailing political developments, and that as NARC Kenya, by way of this letter, we are giving notice to exit the coalition as stipulated in the exit clause in the coalition agreement. This notice is effective from the date of this letter." Even as the nomination of opposition leaders to cabinet continues to draw mixed reaction from both members of the public and the political class, Azimio leaders Kalonzo Musyoka of the Wiper Party, DAP-K's Eugene Wamalwa, and Jubilee's party's Jeremiah Kioni have termed the move as motivated by individual ambitions. The Azimio leaders reiterating that the coalition will not have any cooperation with the ruling Kenya Kwanza alliance by joining President William Ruto's cabinet.
Do you expect him surely to go and serve Ruto as Attorney General? I think he's expecting too much. But in any event, the bottom line is no such thing. We are not interested.
There hasn't been any offer by William Ruto to Azimio. And Azimio will in any case not accept any positions from this administration.
Despite the Azimio leaders pledging to continue supporting Raila Odinga's AU Commission chairmanship bid, they claim there is a plot by President William Ruto to weaken the opposition by absorbing some of its members into government.
Alifamia Jubilee na alikuwa nafikiri sisi tutafunga vilago tuende kwake. Tugali hapa. Kwa hivyo hata sasa amefamia ODM, wao wenyewe kama kuna wale wataenda, hata kwa Jubilee wengine walienda na tu kukufa.
Azimio leader Raila Odinga reiterates that neither the ODM party nor Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition has entered into any coalition agreement with President William Ruto's UDA party. In a statement, the opposition leader says, "While we extend our best wishes to the nominees and trust they will contribute positively to national development, we continue to advocate for national engagement under the conditions we have previously outlined, including
compensation to families of the victims of extrajudicial executions and persons injured by the state since last year. This as a section of ODM youthful leaders led by Embakasi MP Babu Owino opposed the party's inclusion in President William Ruto's cabinet, calling for the immediate replacement of the 4 cabinet nominees.
He completely refused to listen to the issues raised by Kenyans, and instead he raided the opposition to appoint cabinet secretaries in a bid to weaken oversight against his government and to gain cosmetic stability, to consider the next general election and to ignore this and the next generation.
For a coalition outfit that has withstood unity test both pre and post the 2022 general election, the current political storm is undoubtedly the latest challenge facing the Azimio coalition, with all eyes focusing on the principles. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, at the Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka Command Center.
Deputy President Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua finds himself in a political storm. His traps to have opposition chief Raila Odinga completely warded off from government and State House have totally faltered. Will he resist or align? Raila's strategic pact with the President William Ruto has cornered Gachagua, narrowing his choices. Our reporter Melita Oletenges reports.
Hiyo ikulu nimeweka mitego kila kona, kila bahali nimeweka, na niko na watu wakunipigia simu wakionekana tu karibu naambiwa.
For Rigathi Gachagua, a massive system failure might well be reported. Supposed traps around State House to keep out Raila Odinga appear to have severely malfunctioned.
Mimi niko hapo na mimi nalala na jicho moja, ingine nalala ikiwaona. Nafunga moja usiku. Ile ingine nakaa kama torch. Nikisikia maneno nakimbia hapo. Kwa sababu hii serikali tulitafuta na shida mingi sana.
After being sworn in deputy president, Gachagua never wasted the moment to showcase an extreme streak of political partisanship. His shareholder stance may no longer hold as President Ruto pursues a broad-based inclusivity strategy, even welcoming the opposition he once fiercely opposed.
Mimi nawaambia hii serikali ni ya mahasla. Hakuna nusu mkate, hakuna handshake, hakuna hiyo borojo. Hawa wananchi walimaliza kazi ya viongozi tarehe 9 mwezi wa 8.
While the president has had an about turn on his hard stance against opposition leader Raila Odinga, Gachagua has maintained a studious silence as Raila remains hopeful they can work together. Political pundits say Gachagua's traps may have been set off in a progressive and calculated move. On February 26th, Raila Odinga and William Ruto met Uganda President Yoweri Museveni. Photos surfaced online, much to the chagrin of the deputy president's allies and supporters. The meeting, with undertones of political camaraderie brewing, caught Rigathi Gachagua by surprise, who would then escalate his statements against a power-sharing deal.
Hii mzee kitendawili amenikuta kwa mazishi hapo juzi. Hapo Nyandarua. Akaniambia wewe, kwa nini hutaki mazungumzo? Kwani unaogopa mazungumzo? Wewe kubali tuzungumuze. Mimi nikaamuka na kumwambia mimi siogopi mazungumzo, ile mtu unaogopa ni wewe.
Rigathi Gachagua's encounters with Raila Odinga in public have been cordial, but political jabs have been traded on different platforms. A rift between President William Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua has in recent times drove the DP to the edge. His options with Raila Odinga in Ruto's inner circle may deprive him of some shares. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, it's now time for us to focus on data points, and you're really looking into what has happened to the budget of 2024-2025 over the past 1 month. And of course, this is informed by the decision by the president to reject the finance bill of 2024 that would have raised up to 344 billion shillings. That's the figure that we have there. Initially, the budget was totaling 3.99 trillion shillings. Now, the National Treasury Acting Cabinet Secretary, who is also the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Secretary, that is Musalia Mudavadi, appeared before Parliament this week and indicated that the proposed budget cuts are 198 billion shillings, which is inclusive of some 20 billion shillings that are to be cut from the resources allocated to counties. And this is how it looks. Initially, the budget that was passed by Parliament in June of 2024, the development vote was up to 746 billion shillings. It is now being reduced to 623 billion shillings. The recurrent expenditure was set at 1.63 trillion shillings, has been reduced to 1.59 trillion shillings. And then the Consolidated Fund Services, that is CFS, it was initially supposed to be 1.21 trillion shillings. It is going up slightly to 1.23 trillion shillings. Of course, this is what goes into paying salaries, pensions, and gratuities and other concerns relating to that, which include the interest on loan. Then the counties had been allocated 400 billion shillings. The statement by PCS, Musalia Mudavadi, indicates that that allocation will rise to 410 billion shillings, but I will be explaining why it is rising, yet it's also reducing. So the total budget initially was 3.99 trillion shillings. It is being reduced to 3.87 trillion shillings, which is a reduction of 121 billion shillings. That is the effective reduction to the total size of the budget. Now, I just told you that initially the counties had been allocated 400 billion shillings. Now, the statement from the National Treasury indicates that that is being reduced by 20 billion shillings. That would mean it drops to 380 billion shillings. But there is some carryover resources from the previous financial year that ended 30th of June 2024 of 30.8 billion shillings. So the National Treasury is proposing that these resources be revoted in the current budget, and that is why the total eventually will be some 410 billion shillings. But it does not mean any extra resources, because those are resources that were owed to them anyway. Something else that is also coming up is that that supplementary budget that is totaling to 3.87 trillion shillings, this is how it's going to be raised or funded. The revenue projected is up to 3.05 trillion shillings. That is in the name of ordinary revenues, as well as what is projected to be appropriations in aid or collections from the ministries. Then there are grants of up to 51 billion shillings, and that leads to a deficit of 761 billion shillings. Remember, initially, by June 30th of 2024, the deficit at the time was 597 billion shillings. Because of the withdrawn finance bill, that is going up to 761 billion shillings, which will have to be raised through borrowing. Let's see how that will play out. Initially, the external debt or the external borrowing that was supposed to be done based on the previous budget was 333.8 billion shillings. That will rise slightly to 356 billion shillings. For the domestic market, the government was to borrow 263.2 billion shillings. Now that is going up by a whole 140 billion shillings to get to 404.6 billion shillings. Now you can see that is significant, because actually the domestic borrowing is going to be way more than the foreign borrowing, and of course this will be mostly in treasury bills and bonds issued by the Central Bank of Kenya. Then there will be, so that total deficit or the borrowing that will be done is 761 billion shillings, as what is proposed in the numbers presented by the National Treasury to the National Assembly. So now, something else that is a bit of concern, of course, the pensions and gratuities have been increased. These are budget carryovers from the previous budget of 2023-2024. There are pensions and gratuities of 23.8 billion shillings. There are transfer to counties, which is just mentioned, of 30.8 billion shillings. And there is the NGCDF. These are resources that were owed to the National Government Constituency Development Fund of 13.5 billion shillings. They are being revoted in the current budget, meaning out of the 3.87 trillion shillings, the 68.1 billion shillings are resources that should have actually been sent to different institutions in the previous financial year. So there's some questions that are emerging. Well, we don't have that, but it's concerning what is happening to the road maintenance levy that the National Treasury is indicating that it will be raising more resources of up to 32 billion shillings that they hope that can be accruing to the exchequer. And of course, we'll be looking forward to seeing what happens after that, especially now that Parliament has reconvened. It will be considering these numbers in detail to give us what eventually should be the way forward for the budget of 2024-2025, which will be handled by a different cabinet secretary when the time comes. That's Data Point for this week. We take a short break. When we return, we have more stories. In In business, over half of Kenyans believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. This is according to a recent survey by research network Afrobarometer, which also shows the majority of Kenyans are opposed to increased tax on petroleum products. Dennis Otieno has the details of these and other key findings in the following report.
The survey done by the University of Nairobi's Institute for Development Studies and Afrobarometer, a pan-African non-partisan survey research network, shows 59% of Kenyans fear the country is headed the wrong way. 40% are okay, while 1% are undecided. Of the 2,400 respondents interviewed between 11th April and 3rd May this year, 62% blame the government for doing a poor job of managing the economy. 36%, however, give the government a thumbs up for its performance.
We were told it was about the bottom up, it was about the common person, but we compare data in 2021 and 2024, that's round 9 and round 10, and the lived poverty is still ranking high at 59%.
75% believe the government has done little to improve the living standards of the poor, while 76% said the government has scored poorly in job creation.
Those who approve or strongly approve is rather small, but particularly if you look at the Gen Zs, so we have that basically all the age groups, less than 10% approve of this.
On matters taxation, 91% of Kenyans disapprove increased tax on petroleum products. Among the key problems facing Kenyans, health tops with 50% calling upon the government to address it urgently. Increased cost of living, unemployment, crime and corruption all form the list of problems facing Kenyans.
You find that nepotism and tribalism is really working. You go you apply for a job, but it's only for formalities. The job has already been secured for someone else.
Dennis Otieno, Citizen TV.
Over 60 billion shillings worth of financial assets are being held by the Unclaimed Financial Authority. 31 billion shillings in cash and 1.7 billion shilling worth of shares, that is speaking in Mombasa. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority CEO John Mwangi blames it on the many low-value assets that do not motivate owners to make a claim as the main contributor to the increase of unclaimed assets from 55.6 to 62 billion shillings. They have now launched a nationwide campaign to sensitize Kenyans about the unclaimed financial assets. In the campaign, the authority is working with chiefs, the judiciary and other national government administrative officers to reach out to families that lost their loved ones and who might have left behind financial assets.
As a government agency, so that we're able to sensitize the general public on what we do and how people can claim these monies. We felt just being in Nairobi and waiting for people to come may not be the most optimal way or strategic way, and therefore we identified GAOs, National Government Administration Officers, as one of our key partners that we can partner with, collaborate with. They are always with the people, and then among their forums, they can tell the people who is unclaimed assets and also show people how they can claim their assets.
Kwa nafikiri ni watu wamekufa, wameaga. Lakini kuingia huko hata nimekuta pesa mingi sana ni ya Gen Z. Because ndio wale watu wanatumia simu, ukibadilisha kutoka this mobile provider to the other one, unaacha pesa zako zingine huko, pesa kidogo, airtime na data. Watu wengine ni wale watu wanafungua account, ukitaka pesa zingine loan, na hiyo loan ikikosekana unasahau. Wengine tu watu wanaenda kuweka deposit kule kotini for cash bills, ukililizua unasahau. Deposit za maji, wengine hata ni shares wanunua wakasahau.
Na wanafunzi vile ya kupata hizo pesa, because sio mzuri pesa tu kukaa kwa account. Isaidie wale ambaye pengine wanajua pengine waliwachiwa pesa na hata wajui. So hii ni njia mzuri kufunza wa Kenya, kuambia hao vile ya kuchukua hiyo pesa, taratibu ambazo zinatakana, nini atafanya ndio aweze kupata hiyo pesa.
The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority has been nominated to the Global Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator, RITA. EPRA Director General Daniel Kiptoo will chair the steering committee for a term of 2 years to finish in 2026. RETA, launched in 2021 at COP26, is a crucial resource for energy regulators worldwide, offering knowledge, products and regulatory tools to support the development of sustainable, affordable and secure energy systems. EPRA, now in its second term on the global body, says it will continue to utilize the position to enhance its knowledge on global best practices on clean energy capabilities. American-based Kenyan food outlet Swahili Village has reached a no-fault settlement with the District of Columbia after allegations of wage theft concluding a year-long legal dispute. Restaurant founder Kevin Onyona says the decision was voluntary, even as he asserted that the restaurant took this step to allow the business refocus on its core mission of providing service to its customers. Onyona emphasizing that the settlement was not an admission of wrongdoing. Onyona's statement reads in part, "This is not an admission of wrongdoing. No evidence of any wrongdoing or liability is accepted. There is also no admission of truth of any of the factual allegations in the lawsuit. It may also not be used as an admission or evidence of any fault or omission in any civil, criminal or administrative proceedings in any court, administrative agency or other tribunal." Swahili Village had been fined an equivalent of 67 million shillings or $526,000 to resolve a 2023 wage theft lawsuit in which the company was accused of violating an array of labor laws.
We were not ordered by anyone to do so, not the DC, Attorney General, nor the courts. Clause 18 of the agreement makes it very clear that the settlement of this lawsuit takes place on a no-fault basis. This is not an admission of wrongdoing. No evidence of any wrongdoing or liability is accepted. There is also no admission of the truth of any of the factual allegations in the lawsuit. It may also not be used as an admission or evidence of any fault or omission in any civil, criminal, or administrative proceedings in any court, administrative agency, or other tribunal. The context is also important.